Hey guys, I'm excited to be here again for our second weekly video series, and I'm going to do a better job this time because I have someone helping me share the stuff in all the places so I can get this content to all kinds of summer house. Today we are talking about what it really takes to create and launch an online summit, because I feel like there are people on both ends of the spectrum when it comes to their expectations around hosting a summit. There are people who think that there's so much to do and they can't possibly do it, and it's just this impossible thing that just takes so much work. But then there are also people on the other side of that who think it's really simple. All they have to do is find some speakers, get those presentations from the speakers in no time flat, and you just got a summit. It's fine, it's easy. And I wanted to give a more realistic look at what it takes for, whatever side of the spectrum that you're on. And maybe you're somewhere in the middle. I hope you're somewhere in the middle. But if you're on one of those two sides, I want to give a realistic look at what it takes to host a summit. So I will say that the people who think that there's a lot to do are more correct than the people who think that it's this easy thing you can throw together within a week or two and you're good to go. There are a lot of moving pieces and it takes several months of work, but I can tell you that it's possible. You can do it. It's not like, it's several months of you sitting and just working 24/7 and it's so complicated. So I wanted to give you a good idea of what actually goes into it today by talking about the 5 biggest pieces of hosting a summit. So you can keep those things in mind. I can give you some tips for what they include, how to make them easier. And so you can kind of see what the timeline for those specific things would look like, because I want you to have a good idea of this. So I have those 5 things, and we're just going to go through them really quickly. I don't want to keep you here all day. The first thing is you need to take some time to plan who the summit is for and what it's actually about. And I think this is something that people skip, and when they don't skip it, they get stuck on it, or maybe they skip it because they get stuck on it. Because a lot of the times, your audience for your business is not the same as your audience for the summit, and that can trip some people up. And why that is you need your summit to be really specific. You need to have a really specific audience for your summit to be successful, and then you need a more specific topic, which I'll get to in a minute here. But it's so important because the more targeted your summit is, the more specific the audience is, and the topic of your summit, the more people you're actually going to get registered, because it's going to catch their attention so much easier. Your conversion rates are going to skyrocket. As far as sales go, from 3 to 5% to closer to 20% in sales is the difference between not getting specific with this and getting specific. So that's why it's so important. As for choosing who your summit's going to be for, there's a couple ways you can do this. You might have a business where it's really easy. Okay, the business I run, the same exact audience is who my summit's going to be for. But if you have a more broad audience, which a lot of people who follow me do, you might target online business owners. You might target creative entrepreneurs. Those are really broad audiences. You do not want to run summits for those audiences unless you already have a huge following of your own, because you're just not going to see the results you want to see. So choosing who it's for can be difficult if you do have that broader audience. But what I recommend doing is look at the people who are most engaged in your audience. What do those people do? Do you see any trends or patterns in what those kinds of people do for their business? If you do, make a summit for those people. But I also know people who just kind of oh, that niche sounds fun. I'm going to do one for them. And I can't give an example right now because she's just getting ready to pitch speakers and put this thing on. But after she does, I'll have a really great example to share for someone who's just picking niches here and there because her audience is so broad. And it's a great way to do it. It's a great way to host a more successful summit than you could if you were, trying to make a summit for your big, huge, wide audience. And then getting specific there also helps with your topic, because you want to choose a summit topic that's solving a specific problem. So your summit overall should be designed to solve a problem for your audience. If your audience is specific, figuring out what that problem is so much easier. So this piece is something you might be able to sit down and figure out in 5 minutes, or it could take you a couple weeks of researching, looking at different options, talking to your audience, things like that. So this one does have a little bit, there's some variance in the timeline there, but I want you to kind of think about what that would look like for you. The second thing that I really want you to think about when it comes to what it takes to launch a summit is finding and managing your speakers. And this is right here the most time-consuming part, hands down. But that's also a good thing, because a lot of it is waiting to hear back from emails and giving them time to create their presentations. So you can be off doing other things, whether it's other things for your summit or whether it is client projects, working on products you already offer, things like that. So it's a good thing that that's the part that's the most time consuming, but you need to keep it in mind when deciding how long it's going to take you to plan your summit. So, I want to dive in a little bit to each of the pieces here, not super deep, but first is finding speakers. When you're looking for your speakers, do not go with the first people that come to mind, okay? Because those aren't always going to be your best option. You want to look for people who have content to share that's really specific to the topic you chose for your summit. So if you say, you're going to solve this specific problem through your summit, you need to make sure the people you pitch have something to share that relates to solving that problem. That will get your audience one step closer to solving that problem. You also need people who can communicate effectively and give presentations or do interviews effectively. So you want to make sure that they have experience doing that, whether it's like on Instagram or Facebook here, or whether they have a YouTube channel, give talks at other summits or in-person conferences. You want to make sure they can do that. And then you want to look for people who have the same audience as your summit. Those are the people that are really going to bring you results as far as email list growth and income, are the speakers you have who can promote to an audience that you're actually looking for in your summit. So keep that in mind when finding speakers. It can be fairly time consuming. So keep that in mind for your process. But after you find them, you also want to take time to connect with them. Even if you've talked here and there in the past, take a couple weeks to connect. I have 2 days on my calendar leading up to my summit, Mondays and Thursdays. And I, on those days, will pull out my phone, sit on Instagram, and just go through all my potential speakers when thinking about pitching, respond to a post or Instagram story or something from them so they remember I exist and so my pitch doesn't just come out of thin air. I definitely recommend doing something like that because it makes your pitches a lot easier, more effective. You feel more comfortable doing it. After the connection, of course, comes the pitch process. I like to pitch in 3 rounds. I'm not going to go through it here, but start with the easy pitches, work your way up to the hard ones, include, social proof with people who have already agreed when you get to those harder pitches. Then comes the speaker management, which is the most frustrating part of a summit, but it's necessary. You have to get presentations from people. You have to communicate with them when you're working with them to get their presentations, but that can be quite the process, and you want to allow yourself plenty of time to do that. So as for, how long you want to have planned for these different pieces for finding speakers, I'd say give yourself a week, give yourself a couple days to be looking around, finding speakers, maybe asking for recommendations. As for the connection phase, maybe 2 to 3 weeks to start communicating with them on social media before you send the pitches. For pitches, I always allow 3 weeks. It takes some time for people to respond to those emails. Maybe you don't fill the spots you thought you would as quickly, so you need time to send out another round of pitches to fill those last minute spots, all that good stuff. And then for creating presentations, you want to give your speakers at least 4 weeks to do that. I've been pitched for summits where I was only given 2 days to create my presentation. Not okay. Give these people plenty of time in case they have other launches planned, other promotions they're a part of, things like that. So that can be a pretty long process, but the good news is that usually you're just waiting on other people, so you can do other things while you're planning it. The next part of, what it really takes to run a summit is a website. So you do need some kind of website to run your summit, but you don't need to make it complicated. This does not have to be intimidating. My recommendation for your first summit, if you're not tech savvy, if it freaks you out a little bit, is to go with whichever platform you already use for your website. I don't care what it is, you can make it work. So I like WordPress. I have all kinds of WordPress templates, resources, tutorials in my Summit Host Vault, but to keep this from getting overwhelming, start with what you have. There are also some software options created just for summits. If you want recommendations for those, let me know, but you really can just use your own website. And it can be nice and manageable. As for what you need on your website, that's going to be things like you need your registration page with email integration. You need ways to publish and then take down presentations at the scheduled times or manually if you need to. You need a way for people to access the All Access Pass, which that's going to be our next little tip here. And then there's a few more things I recommend having, but those things are the big ones. Those are the things you really need to keep in mind. So you can also do all that right on your existing website. Oops, my phone's dying for your Instagram people. But no matter what, you can do all those things on whichever piece of tech you already have. And then how long it takes you to put this together is going to depend on the platform you use, your comfort with it, how in depth you plan to go with your summit, and how many bells and whistles you want to have. But this can take anywhere from a few days to several weeks. So you just kind of want to plan it in. I know that's like a really, really broad range, but I think you'll know based on your comfort and your platform. The next thing I want to go over, hopefully my phone will last for us, is the offer. So that's another big thing that goes into planning a summit, something you need to keep in mind and plan for. After someone registers for your free summit, you're going to give them an offer. And typically this is an all access pass, so ongoing access to the presentations and things like that. I won't go into it. I have podcast episodes if you want to look them up. But for this, you need the sales page, and you need a way for them to purchase and access the content. So that's pretty simple. Most platforms will let you do that. If you're somewhere where you can't, you can always integrate with something like Podia, something I've seen people using a lot. Maybe Thrivecart doesn't host the courses itself, but there's all kinds of options for that as well. I usually do several pricing tiers for my All Access Pass, but you can keep it simple and do one. You don't have to do price increases, but you can. Again, this is something that you can make as difficult or as easy as you want it to be, just based on your experience level and how much time you have to put into your summit. And this is, again, something you can usually have ready within a couple days once you actually sit down to work on it. The last thing that really goes into hosting a summit that I want you to keep in mind is promotion, of course. Anytime you make something, you need to have time to promote it. And here I want to say the size of your audience does not matter. I have, again, podcast episodes on this about why you don't need an email list to host a summit. But you'll promote to your existing audience, no matter how big or small it is. Your speakers will promote. If you have the budget and experience, you can run some paid ads. But the promotion period is definitely something you need to plan for. Usually I recommend a 2 to 3 week promotion period, but you need things like email copy, social media copy, graphics, templates for your speakers to use. So that takes some time as well, excuse me. I'd say it can take 1 to 2 weeks to write all the copy, get the graphics made. I couldn't decide if I was going to say this, but I did make a little product for you guys if you're interested with like all my swipe copy for email, social media, graphics, promotion strategy, all that. Send me a message on Instagram or Facebook if you want that, and I can send you a link. But the promotion is something else you need to keep in mind. Give yourself, maybe plan a week or two to get that planned out without having to like sit for a couple days and like have your brain explode just doing it all at once. So those are the big pieces. It takes time, as you can see, but it's not impossible. Like, it's something you can do. You started a business, you can run a summit too. You just need to plan for it, give yourself plenty of time for it. I also have all kinds of resources to make it easy in the Summit Host Vault if you're interested. The Summit Host Hangout Facebook group is also another really great place to go if you have questions, if you need support, anything like that. So hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Next week, we're going to talk about 2 powerful ways to make money through a summit. It's going to be good stuff. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you then.